So for my part, that question, what stops you? My part of it is from being seen. What really stops you from being seen? And how do you want to be seen? As a portrait photographer, people typically think that that question indicates that I want to know what their picture looks like. Like, what's your style? And of course, that is important. But more importantly to me is, how do you want people to know you? So I'm going to ask you to just sort of sit with that for a second. And as you do, imagine in your mind, from your group of friends and family, those two friends of yours that you just love being with, that everything about them, you love it. They're just beautiful. They're funny and generous and creative and kind. They're all of those things, and you love them. But if you were to tell them that, they might resist. But that's okay because you know it in your heart. And imagine you were to tell them, I want to gift you a portrait sitting. I want you to see how beautiful you are. And so you hand them the gift certificates and they take them and they look down and they say, thanks. Because in their mind, you can see in their eyes, they're thinking, there's no way I'm ever doing this. But you say, but you're just so beautiful. And you can't understand why they're so resistant. But imagine if the roles were reversed, if they got together and gifted you a portrait sitting. How would you feel sitting in front of the camera with me creating your portrait? For some people, they might feel like, oh, this is great. But I will tell you, most of the women I work with, it is the former. There is no way I am doing this. Or if they do it, it's because they have to. Maybe they need marketing material. And so this is the experience that I have. I work with women and I understand it. I understand the apprehension and the hesitance that goes along with it. But I want you to think about that. What stops you from being seen? And more importantly, what is the consequence of being unwilling to be seen? Say, for instance, you are a businesswoman. You're running your own business. And so you've kind of learned the persona you're supposed to have, the way you're supposed to dress and carry yourself and interact. But in your marketing material, instead of a picture of you, there's a picture of your children or your grandchildren or your vacation or your pet in your marketing material. What message is that really sending to people? Because here's the thing, if we are small business owners, there is this accepted understanding that we are probably going to be more expensive than the big box version of whatever it is that we do. For instance, I am a portrait photographer. I know you can go to Walmart to their portrait studio and get an 8x10 picture for way less than you are with me. But conversely, I also know that the experience you have with me is going to be very different than with Walmart. So of course, there's going to be a price difference. But if we're asking people to spend their money and trust us with their life, whatever we're offering, and we can't even show up, what are we saying? How are we introducing ourselves if we aren't even willing to be seen? And to that point, I want to diverge just a little bit. If you're in business, and I'm speaking specifically to you if you are a business owner, and I ask that question, well, how do you want to be seen? Interestingly, what happens very often is they'll say whatever their career is, their profession. So I'll say, well, how do you want to be seen? I'm an accountant. Okay, what does an accountant look like? But I know what they're saying. The message is, well, I have this traditional role, so I guess I should look like other people in this traditional role. In my opinion, though, that's not a good idea unless you are a traditional person. And let me explain why. So say you're in a traditional role, you're an accountant, but you're fun-loving and outgoing and actually really creative. You're just great with numbers. And you show yourself as being the traditional, the shot, the like shot. Okay, you do that, and the person who sees that portrait assumes rightly that you are that kind of person. They meet you, and that's not you at all. Suddenly there's this disconnect, even if it's just subconsciously, it's like something doesn't quite fit. And the other thing that I think is at least as bad is that you show yourself, the traditional I'm an accountant role, and the person who themselves want to work with somebody who's energetic and outgoing and lovely, they're going to walk right by because there's a disconnect. So how you want to be seen, it really does matter. And I just want to show you a couple of examples. There's a couple that I had the opportunity to work with. Some of you know this woman. Her name is Isis. Isis has a very traditional role. She is a financial advisor. So anyone who is in the role of finances, people automatically think they should be seen in this way. She did smile because she wanted to not be seen as stuffy. But I'll be honest with you, this is not Isis. She wanted this picture. I created this picture. But since she had this picture, she's come to realize this is not me. While we were working together, I thought, okay, this might not be on her business card, but I sure wanted her to see this is what I see when I see Isis. She is a classically beautiful, soft, strong woman. And I wanted her to see that. She and her husband worked together. And so she thought we should show that we're partners in this. Okay, that's fine. But after working with them, this is what I saw. They're lovely. They love each other. They respect each other. They have 4 children. They're friends. They're partners. And I wanted them to be able to see that, yes, of course you are one thing, but you're not only one thing. And none of us are. None of us are just one thing. So the question becomes more and more important. How do you want to be seen? I'm going to ask you to go back to those 2 friends. And I don't want them to be random people. I want you to really think about those people that you love being with, why you love being with them, and what makes them beautiful. And now remember the time when we could go have drinks together or coffee. So there you are. Picture yourself, the 3 of you are together having a great time, and you just feel full, that way you feel full when you're with them, always. And you see somebody coming out of the corner of your eye, and they respectfully interrupt and just say, excuse me. And they address one of your friends and say, I just had to tell you, I bet if you weren't so fat, you'd have a lot of friends. And rightly, you're just, what just happened? And they just turn around and say, have a nice day. And first, you attend to your friend and say, well, that was clearly crazy. You know that that's nonsense, right? I mean, for one thing, they don't even know you. And everyone who does know you knows you're beautiful. And so you just try to comfort them and please, let's just move on. But you realize this is nuts. But, you're together, you try to just laugh it off. A few minutes later goes by, though, and that friend reaches over and says to your other, that makes me think about it. I bet if you didn't look so old, you would be able to run that business you've wanted to. You'd probably be really good about it. You should do something about that. Well, now things just got too weird. The other person you could just chalk up to being nuts. But now someone you love is saying something to someone else you love that is damaging. And it's especially bad because you know that they love her too. And you're thinking, how do I handle this? Do you just let it go and say, well, everybody has a right to their own opinion? It's unlikely. Would you say, well, maybe she's right. Maybe she could be successful. She didn't look so old and, well, a little fat. We wouldn't allow it. We would not dismiss it. We would correct it because we know not only is it wrong, it's damaging, and we wouldn't allow that. But how many of us hear those same words said to ourselves, by ourselves? How many of us look in the mirror and say those things. Or maybe in those moments when we have great ideas and we're doodling them down and we're thinking of a business we want to do we stop and say, what am I thinking? I'm way too old. Maybe if I lost some weight, but nobody's going to take me seriously. And maybe the words aren't even formulated that clearly. It's just this feeling that we have. So then do you see how the question, not only how do you want to be seen, but what stops you from being seen is so important? What would you say to those friends? Would you be able to say that to yourself? And before you think I'm exaggerating, because I'm not, this is my experience. I will have a woman come to my studio. Mind you, she's already paid for the sitting. She knows why she's there. She's going to have her picture taken. And she's sitting there. We've already had the conversation. I know how she wants to be seen. I'm excited. She's nervous, but a little excited. And it's fine. Everything's great. Until I raise my camera up. And suddenly she's anxious. I see a woman in front of me who is in pain, real pain. And everything about her says, I need to leave. She gets all jittery and kind of looks around and becomes all nonsensical and saying things like, I don't know how to smile. I don't know where to look. Of course she knows how to smile. She was just smiling. She knows where to look. We were just having a conversation. The only thing that changed is that she knows that at this moment, I am about to reflect back to her what she thinks is bad. The things she hates most about herself. She thinks that's what's going to be seen. And if she had one of those little thought bubbles from the comic books, if it was there, it would read something like, who do you think you are? You're paying somebody to take your picture. I wish I had waited. I could have lost that weight. I wish I had done this sooner. I look so old. I wish I wasn't here. And that last one is the truest. She wishes she was not in a position where she is going to be seen in a way that causes her pain. Think of how this woman shows up if she's in business. We already talked about that. How she shows up in her community, how she shows up in her family. This is, to me, this is important because I get to work with mothers and daughters. And that's a dynamic that we could go on for days about. But sometimes I work with these women who do everything right. Everything. They look at their daughter and they've been telling them that since they were little, you are beautiful. I am so proud of you. You can do anything. You could do anything you wanted. And the daughter's just kind of, oh, mom. But she loves it because it's her mom, right? And then she watches as her mom gets a glimpse of herself in the mirror and she hears her mom say, oh, I hate my butt, my thighs, my hair, my nose, my face, my body. Which of the messages is going to be more deeply embedded in that daughter's psyche? We know. And you know what? The mom doesn't even know that she's doing it. She's trying to do everything right. She doesn't even know that the messages she has been indoctrinated with since her own childhood are now just spilling out of her. She doesn't even know. How did this happen? When did this happen? Because it wasn't that long ago, not that many generations, that the woman of the house would sit to have her portrait created, the legacy portrait. First, it was painted, and then a photographer would come in. And where would that sit in the house but above the mantle, above the fireplace, kind of like the centerpiece of the home? And the children would walk by and see, that's my mother. That's my grandmother. That's my grandmother's mother. And the young women would come by and realize that someday they would have their own portrait, their own legacy portrait to be passed down. I don't believe that women of that time period were under more pressure than we are today. A different pressure, yes. But if you have lived in this society, either a billboard, magazine, television, movie, video, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, has been telling you for as long as you've been exposed to it, this is the standard of acceptable beauty. This is it. And this is your goal. Not how you should be seen, how you should look. Simultaneously, the message has been, this is the standard, you will never reach it. Never. You should still be working at it. In fact, this should be your priority, but you'll never reach it. But don't worry, we're here to help. We have a whole line of lotions and cosmetics. We even have surgical procedures to help you inch toward this unattainable standard. We'll help you physically change your body so you can try to fit in. These are the messages. How are we not confused and bombarded with this? And at this point, I have to acknowledge the fact I am a portrait. I create beautiful portraits. So is there a contradiction there? Is there a hypocrisy in this? I don't think so, because I truly believe that to create the most beautiful portrait, that question has to be asked and it has to be answered. I want to tell you about another experience I had. I was at my studio and a family walked by, a husband, wife, and their grown daughter. And the mom knew what I was about and she was out. The husband, he didn't know. So he's kind of poking in, what's going on? And I say, I show women their beauty. He calls his wife back and I see her. She's, no. And her daughter's like, come on, let's go. They come into the studio and she's just looking at me, daggers. And I said, when's the last time you were photographed? And she said, no. And her daughter's like, I don't know what to tell you. So I said, well, when's the last time you were photographed with your daughter? And she started crying. Unfortunately, my client showed up, so they had to leave. But she came back and she told my assistant that she hadn't stopped crying since she heard the question. And she gave her contact information. So we had the conversation and she came back. And I want to show you Janice. This is Janice. Now tell me this woman isn't beautiful. She has 2 grown children who are happy and healthy. She has a mother who is aging poorly and struggling, and she takes care of her. She shows women their beauty by helping them feel beautiful. She's a stylist. She's an artist. So she and her daughter came back from New York State, spent the weekend, and we created their portraits. And it was beautiful. All from the question, when's the last time you were photographed? I also have the opportunity to work with people like Brittany. Brittany's sweet. I've known Brittany most of her life. I moved away, came back and realized, oh, Brittany's a young woman now. Brittany is shy. Brittany's used to being the one with the pretty girls. She's the support group of the pretty girls in her mind. So she came to my studio with one of the pretty girls because the pretty girl had the portrait session. And she let the pretty girl just throw some lipstick on her. And that was about it. And I said, can I just show you what I see when I see you? And she's like, no. But she did. And this is Brittany. There's no more makeup on. It touches me because I know Brittany is shy and sweet and demure and would do anything for anyone at any time. She shouldn't be the support group. She should be seen as she is. I had another experience. This one was really interesting to me. I was in the grocery store and Mary was walking down the aisle with her mom Mary was about 13 at the time, and she was super sweet. And to me, any teenager who's doing okay, it's pretty astounding, right? She was actually flitting down the aisle. Being cool was not even remotely important to her. She was just being herself. And so I approached her mom and said, "Your daughter is beautiful. I would love to show her her beauty. I would love to gift her a portrait session." And her mom's like, "Really?" So we had the conversation. How do you want to be seen? They show up, and she happens to mention she had just gotten a crossbow. And I thought, wow, cool. We have to somehow incorporate the strength of this girl. But, and I don't blame her mom, it's the role she played. Her mom said, "Mary's sister's really pretty." And Mary said, "Oh, yeah, my sister's the pretty one." And it broke my heart a little bit. So we put the tiniest bit of lip gloss on and we covered the maybe 2 blemishes on her face, and that was it because she felt so uncomfortable. And we created this, a strong, beautiful, gentle, sweet, sweet soul. That's who she is. I get to show women their beauty. It's not just about a pretty picture. This young woman came back. She sent me an email and she said, "You changed my life a little bit. You make me want to be a photographer, to do for other people what you did for me." And I will tell you, there is no higher praise than that. This is Ebony. I met Ebony, and she is a classically beautiful young woman. Anyone who would see her would immediately say, "Oh, well, yes, she's clearly beautiful." But it turns out she is an introvert living in the world of extroverts. And while she put on the persona of being a certain way, in fact, she's very gentle, very quiet. She wanted to be seen in her grandmother's wedding dress, which, as you can see, is not a luxurious, elegant gown, but rather a simple cotton dress. She's an old soul, and I wanted her to see that. She's not a weak one, and I wanted her to see that too. She's strong enough to have twigs wrapped around her neck and to be in a big feather dress and to be seen that way. This is Ebony. She didn't think she could look this way, but of course she can. There she is. And just a couple of more. Mothers and daughters, like I said, the dynamic is always interesting. This mother and daughter, they love each other. They adore each other. They're sweet and funny and they love to laugh, but they are fiercely protective of each other. And they are strong, powerful, powerful women. Which leads me to the thought that we are so many things. We can be sweet and playful, but we can also be super sexy and strong. And I think asking the question, how do you want to be seen? I think I ask it because I realize how important that is. I want to bring you back to the woman sitting in front of me who's nervous, and I realize that she's simply reacting. I know this isn't her because we've had a conversation. I know who she wants to be, and it's important to me to show her. So I see her in pain and I see her just wilted and wishing she wasn't there, but we work together. And the process, that the thought bubble changes a little bit and it becomes, okay, fine, let's just get this over with. And then she settles in a little bit and kind of smiles and gets into it. And then I tell her how beautiful she is. She's sitting in front of me. No, not me, my daughter. You should see my daughter. She's beautiful. And then, really? Wow. By the time we're done, very often what happens is she goes from this to, when can we do this again? I want to bring my daughter to experience this. I want my mother to I want to bring both of them to experience this, to experience it. She hasn't even seen an image. So what's the difference? What happened? She was seen. She was seen as who she is. So I want to ask you, what is the power of being seen? And if you are like so many people for whom the answer is, I don't want to be seen, I don't want to think about, all of the things I don't like about myself, I will ask you to do this. Think of or go to the person who loves you most. Ask them how you should be seen. Because the fact is, that is how you are seen to those who love you. And that is your portrait. That's your portrait. So for the relationships that you have, and those women who are sitting there telling themselves, no, not me, my daughter, no, not me, get the children, that's fine. Photograph them. My husband can be in it. My dog can be in the family portrait, but I belong on the other side of the camera. Tell them, no, you don't. Be seen. And I want to get your input. As I've discussed these things, there may be some issues that have come up. There may be thoughts that have come up. You may be listening thinking, what's the big deal? It's a picture. I take pictures all the time. And if you are, great, pass it along. But if any of this rings true, I would love for you to discuss how you feel about being seen, how you want or don't want to be seen. And honestly, what stops you from being seen? And I'm not going to ask you to share those things that you're comfortable with. No, forget comfortable. Share the truth and realize that the things that stop you probably stop the people you love too. So let's talk about it. How do you want to be seen? I would really like your input.
Jean wrote, good thing my computer camera is broken. You'd see me crying.
Oh.
I have to agree with Jean Bain that brought tears to my eyes as well.
Why?
Lisa, I don't start crying. I'm so impressed with your presentation.
Why does
That was beautiful.
Why does it hit you? Thank you, but why does it touch you that way?
Because I see what you're saying inside myself and inside people. I mean, I work with people on a regular basis that I'm trying to get them to connect more deeply to themselves, and it's very hard to do. And when people do, there's just this glow. There's this like cultural perception of what we should look like, and then there's this inner knowing. And if we could stay in our inner knowing, how powerful would that be? But well done, Lisa. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to peek at the chats. I might have to have somebody else because I'm a little emotional myself.
Yeah. I'll do it.
Oh, thank you.
Beth says, so powerful, Lisa. And Ashley says, hard to talk when you can hardly breathe. Amazing.
Thank you. Ashley, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you, Lisa. It'd be really interesting to hear what people have to say about how they'd want to be seen. And I was thinking about, for me, I'll start, when I think about the person that kind of knows me the best, aside from my beautiful sister, it would be my partner, Phil, because he sees me like in all the time. And he thinks I'm a huge goof, but at the same time, he thinks I'm very sexy and beautiful, and he knows how smart I am. So it's, I'm just saying it. That's not necessarily comfortable for me to do, but I'm going to say it. So
Good.
If I were to see myself through his eyes, I would know that my pictures would include those things probably.
Yes.
So,
yes.
But that's not what you normally think of when you go get your portrait done. You're like,
Exactly. Exactly. Well, somewhere along the line, that's, especially if you're in business, we've been told that's the look, right? But it's your look if that's who you are. But I don't know many people like that. Right. I mean, there are a few for sure, but not many.
But I think your idea of us to think about how maybe our people who love us see us, I think that can be helpful in how, if it resonates with us, of course.
And if it doesn't, ask yourself why. Because if they love you, listen to them.
Yes,
listen to them.
trust them.
Yeah. But
so Lisa,
I thought one of the most, that was so interesting that you asked us to ask our loved ones, because, I lost my mom, who I loved intensely, but she never let us take pictures of her. And so there are so few pictures that I could find, but I wanted them and I needed them. And even if she was in her, she was notorious for her ugly sweaters. But even when she's in those, all I saw when I looked at them was love.
Yeah.
And I forced myself to be in like that whole thing with, I take pictures of my kids because I love them and I want to look at them and I just adore everything about those pictures. And I forced myself, because of not having pictures of my mom, to get in on a couple.
Good.
But I hated them. I hate the whole process of them. I hate how I look and I see myself, and I'm just critical. But I forced myself to do it because I guess I knew inherently that someday they're going to want those, and that they're going to see them just, I don't know, in a different way.
Thank you.
Than I see them. So if you can have us create a moment that I'm happy with and they're happy with, that would be amazing. That's amazing.
Thank you. I hesitate sometimes to ask this question because it feels manipulative and I don't want that. But I ask people, do you have photos of your mom and your dad? Do you have photos with your mom and your dad? What would it mean to you to have photos of your mom and your dad? And if I could, I didn't want to take too much time, but let me just share this. This is April and her daughter. April is one of the most amazing women I have ever met. And she just knew she had to have these portraits for her children. And so she bravely booked the session. And they spent time together, again, the whole afternoon, just being together. This is April, her two daughters, her two granddaughters. And yes, one of her granddaughters is a teenager and she hated every minute of it. That's going to pass.
Yep, it is. That portrait's gonna be treasured.
Right. Mm-hmm. I would really love for you guys, with the time we have remaining, to hear how you want to be seen. And if you don't want to be seen, why?
Well, it's like touches into all those touch points, right? I mean, my mother, I don't know how to answer that question. My partner has gotten heavily into photography, so he's got all these really good cameras and lenses, and he's taking pictures all the time. And he always takes, I'm just walking around, he's taking pictures, and then he's like, oh, look at this, it's such a beautiful picture. And I look at it and I just want to cry because I think it's just so hideous, and like he's brought me to tears, and I have begged him to stop taking pictures of me. And it's just, God, it's such a crazy, hard thing, that whole, everything you talked about. And of course, just like you were saying, Beth, I've got two sons, and they're not that crazy about having their picture taken. But I always said to them, you're going to love having these pictures when you're older and I'm gone and all of that. But I don't know. It's just always painful. So I don't know how I want to be seen, because I kind of don't want to be seen. And, I don't know. It's so hard. So hard. But but just like you said, Beth, I look at pictures sometimes when I can see that there's like this love between my kids and I. And even if I'm uncomfortable with it, I'm like, okay, this is a good picture. My kids will love that picture. And that's what's important. But anyway, yeah, wow.
Can I ask
Very
you,
powerful
Judy,
stuff.
Have you always been uncomfortable, or has it changed? Has life changed it?
I've always been uncomfortable. My mother was definitely, she just hated the way she looked. She had a terrible body image. She was loving and wonderful, but just like you said, sort of all the messages I got were around that. And my father was kind of, well, we could go into a whole therapy session, which we won't do, but he just was all about me being perfect all the time. And of course I could, I never felt even remotely that. So it was just all kind of crazy and twisted in that way. And he also took pictures all the time. He was he drove everybody crazy, and that was before digital cameras. But he was always taking pictures, and I hated it. I just hated that constant attention. And I don't know. Yeah, it runs deep.
I feel like
It's
you hit
always-
on something though. And you said it something, I don't remember how you said it, but that when it's about what the picture is about and not just about critiquing yourself,
Right.
then it has value. If you remember that the point of the picture is to document a moment in time,
Yes.
and not to see if you're measuring up. And I'm not saying this as someone who's nailed that, because
No, you're right. Yeah.
but it's about the purpose of the, it's like the message of the picture. And actually nobody else is looking at you the way that you look at yourself.
Exactly. And for those of you who are moms who want your children to have these images, or who you think your children are beautiful, okay, I'm just here to tell you there's a reason your children are the beautiful people they are.
So true.
It doesn't happen on their own. It doesn't. Left to our own devices, none of us are going to turn out that great. So if you have really wonderful children,
Yeah.
be proud of their parent. Let them be proud of their parent. But enough said about that.
It sounds like Dr. Deb should sign up. She's
I
got two
would-
beautiful
yeah, I would
daughters,
love
and
to.
she's beautiful.
Get me some more clients and then. No, I definitely will do it.
Okay.
I think I see all this as being an important piece of all this is self-compassion, because we can talk about how does somebody who loves me sees me, but maybe somehow we don't believe somebody loves us, or how do the people that might be hard for us to do. But if we can imagine that that we have a young child in front of us who's us, how would we talk to us? And how would we want that personification of us to be seen? Does that make sense? Like if this was
Absolutely.
our child, we would never treat that way, but we treat ourselves that way.
Right.
Yes?
You're reminding me, Deb, of a conversation that Deb and I have had that kind of relates to what I'll be doing in my presentation. But it's the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion. People think self-esteem is the thing that you need to be successful, but self-esteem is not the same as self-compassion, and self-compassion is really what leads to success and a sense of peace and self-love and that kind of thing.
Wow.
Self-esteem is kind of a false surface thing that we apply to a specific skill set.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
Self-compassion is
really important distinction. I really love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that keeps coming up in all of our sessions in one way or another about like turning it around and being our own best friend. Like, would we ever say, just like you were saying, Lisa, like, would you ever say these things to a friend? And then, and of course we know these things, but then still to,
That makes me think of,
there's still the struggle. Yeah.
That was a really powerful part of the presentation too, because when you started with, so this person comes up and says, you're too old. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, that's like uncomfortable. Like that made me uncomfortable when you were telling that part of the story. But I think that that's an important part of your presentation. It's like, we need to be uncomfortable because you don't talk to somebody like that. You don't talk to yourself like that either. And there's beauty in all ages, there's beauty in all body sizes, and we need to see that in ourselves.
And it's really nothing to do with the ages and the body size. It's really the person. And something you just said, Judy Blake, made me think of Jeannie's presentation yesterday when she was talking about tapping into these issues. And consciously, we do know things. Consciously, we know, of course, these things don't matter, but it's so much deeper than
Mhm.
that. And Jeannie,
Yep.
what did you say? But you didn't mention it yesterday, but you've mentioned to me before how powerful the subconscious, like how much of our thought process is really dictated by the subconscious versus the conscious.
There's different numbers, but I'd give it 99%.
I think
I think
so.
it's that big
Wow.
of a driver.
Yeah.
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 Lisa, could I say something?
I wish you would, please.
All over here. I just was so enlightened and moved by what you were doing. It was like watching an alchemical process. It was you asked questions of people and you observed them, and you stayed with the discomfort and but helped them through it. And then what you showed them was just a transformation, not a transformation of them, but a transformation of their seeing of themselves and being seen. How you caught that deep inner ephemeral process, I don't know, but I've never seen that happen before. And I'm just sort of stunned by the beauty of it.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Well, if no one else has
I have to hold
anything, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just holding my mic out because Liz told me it's hitting my shirt and making noises.
Yes.
I'm not technically savvy with all this setup yet, so.
Yeah.
I'll try and talk. I don't even know if I can talk right now, but Lisa, I'm so present at the fact that you've returned into my life and that over the years. And I think I'm just hearing your conversation about being seen that you've been having for so many years. And it's just, I just got so slapped in the face and present to how I let this stop me in so many areas of my life. And even in business, I made the decision to close my other two businesses. And in this conversation, I got that feeling of when we were approaching that 7-figure mark, I knew I kept hearing, and I don't know if I can do it. I'm sorry, I'm trying.
That's okay.
Take your time.
I knew when we got there that staying hidden wasn't going to be an option anymore. And I think I'm just starting to see where when I get really, really successful in things, I like to bail before I have to go any further because that piece is really hard for me. I got too many Southern women behind me that have built a really big conversation that I've bought into. So thank you. That's all I can.
Ashley.
That's awesome, Ashley.
Thank you. And I'm just going to tell on you a little bit. I'm not going to tell your private life, Ashley, but I'm going to say this woman is a soldier. So do not be fooled into thinking she's anything more than outstanding. Truly.
Ashley, if you're going to be around for the next presentation, I have an exercise that might help you.
Oh, Judy, I'm here. I'm in. I'm all in. Thank you.
I appreciate so much the genuine and authenticity, everybody. Thank you.
Truly, yes. And I didn't include one of Miss Jeannie because I didn't want to embarrass Miss Jeannie, but I do want to talk a little bit about how you want to be seen in your business. So I had the opportunity to photograph Jeannie, and those of you who are experienced what she offers yesterday, it's pretty amazing, right? But this woman came up ready to be seen. She was nervous, she was all of that, but she came with her style and her presence. And even though she has what might be considered either wellness or financial, somewhere in between, she came as her. And when you look at her marketing, where I was involved, and she only chose a few. She was going through them being like, no, I don't like them. And I'm looking at all of them thinking everything about her, everything about those images just said her. And maybe at some point I'll be able to share them with everyone.
Well, I want to speak to, thank you, Lisa. That in the work that I do, there's something called the vow to be invisible. And vows are like limiting beliefs on steroids. And the reason that we make these vows is because, like, in our when it just wasn't safe to be who we are in our life, we made a vow to be something else. So if it just wasn't safe to be who you were and be seen, and making the vow to be invisible gets made. And I have made that vow and in my early life, and just couldn't understand why I both wanted to be seen, didn't want to be seen, wanted to be seen, didn't want to be seen. And now that I've figured it out, like, oh, that's what it is. It makes perfect sense. And seeing it as such is liberating, because it's like, oh, that's what that's about.
Thank you. Yeah.
Really good point.
Liz,
Lisa,
please.
before we run out of time, could you talk a little bit about your podcast?
Yes, thank you, Liz. My podcast is of the same question. How do you want to be seen? And it is born of the conversations that came from the question. And I started, the question initially was, how do you want to be photographed? And I realized, well, no one really knows, and most people don't. So that's a dumb question. And then I realized what I was really asking was that, how do you want to be seen? And so the conversations just excited me so much, and I wanted everyone to hear the answer. So that's the podcast. It is a lot of people in business. There are a lot of people in wellness, creatives, just regular people who I find inspiring. And that's it. Thank you for asking, Liz. And I need to say, don't think that because you live too far away from me that I'm not going to work with you, because the only thing that I like almost as much as creating the portraits is traveling. So COVID or no COVID, I will be there. And I want to acknowledge that Jean Bean made a beautiful last statement here, sisters in arms.
Oh,
And I thank you. I thank you all.